Hello and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering EDH deck tech idea. Today we are looking at the Master of Keys. It is a 3 mana X 3/3 flying creature, and when it enters the battlefield put X +1/+1 counters on it and mill twice X cards. Furthermore, it also has an Underworld Breach effect for all of your enchantments in your graveyard, because each enchantment card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. Of course, it sounds very tempting to fire this spell off with a bunch of mana paid into the X, but this is not necessarily needed for this deck to win, simply because we are playing in an Esper control list that wants to win with an infinite combo. So to start off the game we need to slow our opponents down, so we play Authority of the Councils, a 1 mana enchantment, and creatures your opponent's control enter tapped. Furthermore, whenever a creature an opponent controls enters, you gain 1 life. We also play Blind Obedience, a 2 mana enchantment with Extort, and artifacts and creatures your opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped. Of course, this will not prevent our opponents from building a certain board state, so we will play one board wipe after the other. We play Damnation, a 4 mana sorcery, destroy all creatures, they can't be regenerated. To even protect our board wipe, we play Supreme Verdict, a 4 mana sorcery, this spell can't be countered and destroy all creatures. We play Day of Judgment, a 4 mana sorcery, destroy all creatures, and even if it happens that our opponents can swing at us immediately if they have haste for example, we play Etherize, a 4 mana instant, return all attacking creatures to their owner's hand. Keeping the board in check with board wipes also works in our favor because we need cards in our graveyard simply to be able to pay for the escape costs. Along the way we also play a few Cardadvantage engines, like Mystic Remora, a 1 mana enchantment with cumulative upkeep 1, and whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell you may draw a card unless that player pays 4 mana. We really want to flash an Entity Tracker, a 3 mana 2/3 with flash, and whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, draw a card. We play Phyrexian Arena, a 3 mana enchantment, at the beginning of your upkeep you draw a card and you lose 1 life. We also play Black Market Connections, a 3 mana enchantment, at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase choose 1 or more. You can create a treasure token for the price of 1 life, draw a card for the price of 2 life, and you can create a 3/2 color the shapeshifter creature token with Changeling and you lose 3 life. Probably the best Cardadvantage card in this deck is Ripples of Undeath, a 2 mana enchantment, and at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase mill 3 cards, and then you may pay 1 mana and 3 life, and if you do, return a card from among the milled cards into your hand. We are in blue, so we of course have to play Ristic Study, a 3 mana enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1 mana. Once we have kept the board in check and found all of our pieces, we also want to mill a few cards into our graveyard. Along the way we are also fine with milling our Wincons because we can just escape them, so we also play Mesmeric Orb, a 2 mana artifact. Whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller mills a card. We can also immediately find our Wincon into our graveyard with Entomb, a 1 mana instant, search a library for a card, put that card into your graveyard and then shuffle. And now let's talk about our infinite combo. A card that we want to reanimate out of our graveyard is Abdel Adrian, Goran's Ward, a 5 mana 4/4, and when it enters the battlefield, exile any number of other non-land permanents you control until Abdel Adrian leaves the battlefield, and you create a 1/1 White Soldier creature token for each permanent exiled this way. We want to reanimate Abdel Adrian with the following cards, either Dance of the Dead, Animate Dead, or also Necromancy. There's a bunch of text on this card, so I will just skip that part and explain what these enchantments do. When they enter, you can reanimate a creature card from your graveyard, and even if you have those enchantments in your graveyard, you are totally fine with that, because with the Master of Keys you can just escape them from your graveyard. When the enchantment enters, you will just reanimate Abdel Adrian, who will become enchanted with one of these auras. Due to his ETB trigger, you will target the enchantment, which after the resolve of the ETB trigger will get exiled, and then will trigger also one of the enchantment's effects. Because if one of the enchantments leaves the battlefield, you have to sacrifice the enchanted creature. This will make you sacrifice Abdel Adrian and then return either Dance of the Dead, Animate Dead, or Necromancy back to the battlefield. From this point on you will repeat this loop, and then you will just need one of your other Wincons. For example, you can win with Scrabbling Skull Scrap, a 1 mana 0/3, and whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, target player mills 2 cards, and it will always see the enchantment auras enter the battlefield, so with this card you can mill your opponents out. You can also win with Balemerc Leech, a 2 mana mana 2/2, and whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, each opponent loses 1 life. So you can also drain your opponents out. You can do the same with Grim Guardian, a 3 mana 1/4, and whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. You can also win with Altar of the Brood, a 1 mana artifact. Whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent puts a top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Last but not least, you can also take out your opponent's life totals and also their cards in hand with Hopeless Nightmare, a 1 mana enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life, and when it is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you scry 2, and for 3 mana you can also sacrifice it, but this also requires you to target this card with Abdel Adrian's ETB trigger. So there are a bunch of different ways of how you can enable this combo, and also a bunch of different wincons that can either mill your opponents out or drain them, but your most important key piece is definitely Abdel Adrian, so always keep in mind that you want to fight over this card. You want to win more, you get it. Leyline of Anticipation, a 4 mana enchantment, and if it is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. And you may cast spells as though they had flash. Playing a control list already is a very reactive play style, but even with Leyline of Anticipation you can just wait for your window to start your infinite combo, because you can cast all of your spells with flash. Another great card in this deck is Windfall, a 3 mana sorcery. Each player discards their hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. Not only will this fill up your graveyard to pay for the escape costs of your enchantments, but it also disrupts your opponent's game plans, because they just had to throw all of their good cards in hand into their graveyard. Alright guys, these were a few cards that I would play in the Master of Keys. Make sure to check out my full deck list in the notes below. Let me know which legendary creature I should feature next, which cards I should add to the deck, and then I would say see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.